U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee fielding a range of questions with our Middle East correspondent Zack Anders in Jerusalem, the two discussing relations between both Israel and the U.S., the American aid plan in Gaza, and whether Hamas could survive this war.
As Newsmax sits down with America's ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, discussing everything from Iran to the relations between the White House and Jerusalem and America's involvement in Gaza in what comes next. As you go through scripture, here the desert blooms. That message from the prophets, what does that mean for you as you're finally here?
You know, I've seen it. I first came here in 1973 when I was 17. It's a long time ago, 52 years. So I've seen those prophecies. The desert is blooming. It literally is before our eyes. And the dry bones have come to life.
Is this a bit of an Isaiah moment for you, the I'm here, send me? Or I guess you got a phone call you weren't expecting to be sent, but is it almost the same?
I almost didn't answer it because I typically don't answer a call if I don't know who it is. You just don't know. It might be somebody like you. Yeah. So I say, I don't want to talk to some reporter, off the cuff. But something said, take the call. And I did, and it was him on the line, and he said, Mike, Donald Trump, you're going to be my ambassador to Israel. Just as simple as that. And so for me, it was indeed the Isaiah moment. Here am I, Lord, send me. And here I am.
The first moves of President Trump during his first term to recognize the Golan Heights, to move the embassy to Jerusalem, to recognize Jerusalem as the capital, that survived during the Biden years. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think because it was the right thing to do, and everybody deep down understood it. It was stunning to a lot of people, not just in the U.S., but in the world. When the president moved the embassy and he announced that he was going to do it, he was under pressure from pretty much everybody in the world not to do that. From the Europeans, from the Asians, from North America, from Africa, from the Middle East, everywhere. From the State Department, and even from senators who had voted unanimously to move the embassy, they privately said, don't do it. The world will blow up. I saw him in the White House about 2 weeks after he made the announcement. And I happened to have an opportunity, just the two of us, to visit in the Oval Office. And I asked him, Mr. President, why did you do that? Everybody told you not to. You were under such pressure to just do what every other president had done, and that's promise you were going to do it, but then not deliver on it and always have an excuse why you couldn't. You just went out and did it. I said, why? I never will forget, he just looked at me, he said, because I said I was going to do it, and it's the right thing to do. And I thought, I love that about him. Right thing to do, and it was a promise that he made, it was a promise that he kept. And that's what a lot of people don't appreciate about President Trump.
Have you met with Palestinian leaders at this point, and what have those interactions been like?
I have, and I know it will surprise some people, but I actually have quite a few Palestinian friends that I've known over the past 40, 50 years. Had dinner with some Palestinian friends last Friday night. Right. But I have met with people from the Palestinian American Chamber of Commerce. I plan to meet even with Palestinian Authority leaders. I don't hate anybody. I want them to succeed. I want their people to have great opportunities. But I have not only already met with some Palestinian leaders, mostly business leaders, but I plan to meet with Palestinian government leaders to talk about, are there ways forward? And what are they? What is it going to look like? Because part of the reason the president sent me here was not just to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, but that means all of Israel. That includes Judea, Samaria, and all parts of it. And, I want to be faithful to that task.
Your position here now, landing in the middle of a war, there's an immense suffering, and the carnage inside Gaza is difficult to comprehend, I think, for most people. Those of us that have seen it walk away different people. How do we stop this?
We stop it when Hamas decides that they have no future in Gaza. This was started by Hamas on October the 7th. They created this nightmare. They perpetuated the nightmare. They've kept it going for over 600 days. They took hostages. They tortured them. They abused them. They murdered them. They murdered over 1,200 people on the day itself, October the 7th, taking over 250 hostages, including a lot of Americans. And a lot of Americans tend to forget that Americans were taken hostage. Americans were murdered. Americans, their remains are still being held by Hamas. This all comes down to one thing. the absolutely uncivilized savagery of Hamas. The Israelis want it to end. The U.S. wants it to end. Both have put multiple things on the table that are reasonable to say, here's how it ends. But the one thing that has been consistent, and President Trump has never wavered from this, that Hamas has no future there. They can't govern, they can't stay. Put the blame where it is. It isn't on Israel. It's with Hamas solely, and they can fix it as soon as they decide that they're willing to take an exile, which Israel is willing to let them do, but they're not going to let them stay.
Even that's still a mistake.
It's the best we're going to have, and they're not going to be able to continue to ruin that part of the world. And I'm not sure who wants them. Somebody probably will, but it can't be in Gaza. That's for sure. I wish that more people understood the casualties in Gaza, the civilian casualties, are the result of Hamas amassing people in an area where the Israelis had said, get out of here, we're going to hit this. Who announces in advance they're going to hit a particular area? The Israelis do, because they're trying to keep from civilian casualties. In a war, you don't always have that luxury. So what did Hamas do? They pushed their people right into the very target that Israel had announced. That's why so many have been a part of the carnage.
Emmanuel Macron is going to be meeting at the United Nations proposing Palestinian statehood. What would you say to Mr. Macron about the ideas of Palestinian statehood here and now?
What I said to Mr. Macron was that if you want a Palestinian state so badly, why don't you host it? Let the French Riviera become the new Palestinian state. You've got plenty of land. People don't understand. Israel has less than a tiny fraction. Muslim-controlled countries have 644 times the amount of real estate that Israel has. So when people say, well, carve out some of Israel, what are they asking them to do? Carve out a bit of a tiny piece of property that's the size of New Jersey, and if there really is a desire to see something separate, and quite frankly, a lot of Palestinian people would rather live under Israeli rule than they had the rule of the Palestinian Authority, which is incredibly corrupt and has left them in poverty and unemployed.
These American boys that are controlling the Gaza aid distribution points, you must be very proud of the fact that we've got some incredible veterans with a very distinguished past out there protecting. But the last time, do we have rules of engagement for these Americans who are armed and who are protecting these sites?
There are rules of engagement for them, and I think we're learning every day. We had a situation this past weekend where CNN and the BBC, the AP, New York Times, all reported that there were 21 people murdered, and they claimed the Israelis did it. Turned out nobody got killed that day. There was no chaos, there was no shooting, there was no death, there were no injuries. It went well.
And I did read that statement you put out about those outlets that were just parroting Hamas numbers.
Yeah.
Is there some give and take here where perhaps us war correspondents, it's our job to be on the ground, to be able to fact check and independently verify, but Israel says, no, we should not be there. Is perhaps now the time that we, the foreign press, these war correspondents, should be in there, and when we do have these events, we'll be on the ground to be able to verify and fact check these things?
I think that's a fair point. I think it's one that you certainly need to bring up with the state of Israel. It's their choice to do. In many ways, from my vantage point, it would be in their best interest. The truth, as we learn from the Scripture, the truth shall set you free. I think there are some media outlets, quite frankly, that are so irresponsible, so reckless. They took Hamas news releases and parroted them without any question, and you can't call that journalism when you provide the people with essentially a press release from Hamas. This is like getting dietary advice from Jeffrey Dahmer and calling it culinary expertise. It's ridiculous. And that's why I push back hard, and I will continue to, because I found that it was utterly hurtful. And I believe this. It's contributing to this climate of anti-Semitism that we now see erupting in violence, even in the U.S.
We are seeing an effort now to go after those who have anti-American sentiment that are sharing it on the streets, revoke their visas. The case with Maaloud Khalil at Columbia after what is taking place there. There's so many Americans that take issue with this. What would you say to them when we are going after and revoking the visas of these students who are chanting "Globalize the Intifada"?
People who come to the United States as a visitor are there under the privilege, not the right to be there. Nobody has a right to be in someone else's country. I don't have a right to go anywhere in the world and say, I want to come and denounce your country, denounce what you do and stand for. They'll send me out of there in a heartbeat, anywhere in the world. I hear people talking about constitutional right of free speech. I have that as an American citizen, but someone who comes there who is not a citizen of the United States does not have the right to say things that not only are hurtful, but that are dangerous to Jewish people, or for that matter, to anybody. And when you see these people who pretend to be students, but they're really just agitators, and they're seeking to create a level of disruption to a university, to a community, and they're inciting violence, you bet we ought to send them home. Absolutely. I'm proud that the U.S. is taking a no-tolerance policy toward this nonsense, because this past weekend, when the guy in Boulder, Colorado threw Molotov cocktails at mostly older people, you know, one of the people critically injured was a Holocaust survivor, for God's sake. Think about that. She survived the Holocaust, comes to America to live in peace, is at a peaceful rally, and this guy attempts to murder her by burning her up with a Molotov cocktail. Does this guy deserve to stay in the United States? No. And anyone who thinks so is a very sick person.
Those who say there's a rift between Washington and Jerusalem, what say you?
It's not true. The relationship is incredibly close. There's conversations every single day. We share a level of intelligence and military capability, the likes of which we don't share with anyone. America has friends, it has allies, but it really only has one partner, Israel. And the reason it does is because not only the strategic value, but we share something with Israel that is unique. We share the values of a Judeo-Christian foundation upon which all of Western civilization is built.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And again, thank you for sitting down with Newsmax.
Been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.